The forest wasn't supposed to feel like this. Still, watching, holding its breath. Hannah Brooks froze on the gravel trail behind her cabin, a half-full basket of kindling in one hand, her other hand instinctively resting near the fixed-blade knife strapped to her hip. The morning air in the Ozarks was crisp, laced with pine and damp leaves, but something was wrong. Every instinct from her days in the 10th Mountain Division flared up like a signal fire. No birdsong, no wind. Even the squirrels had vanished. Beside her, Bran, her 11-year-old Mustang, stood with muscles coiled tight, ears pinned back. His chest rose and fell fast, breath huffing steam. His hooves shuffled, but he didn't make a sound. Instead, his eyes were locked on something in the woods. "What is it, boy?" Hannah whispered, dropping the basket and stepping to his side. Bran lowered his head and began to pace in slow, deliberate arcs, nose hovering inches from the forest floor. He caught the scent of something unnatural. Hannah followed his lead, boots crunching softly through damp brush as they veered off the worn trail. She pulled her flannel tighter, glancing up through the canopy. Even the light filtering through the trees looked off. Too filtered, like it didn't want to touch what lay ahead. They reached the edge of a dry creek bed when Bran stopped dead. Hannah's eyes narrowed. There, just behind a thick screen of rhododendrons, was the glint of rusted metal. She pushed the brush aside and froze. A car, a silver sedan, buried nearly to the windows in leaves, dirt, and moss. The windshield was opaque with grime. Mold crept across the hood. No signs of a trail leading in or out. But the kicker? There weren't any footprints, no tire tracks, no birds had even pooped on it. Nature had gone silent around this thing. She pulled out her phone. No signal, of course. "Bran," she said softly. The Mustang stood rigid, tail still, nostrils flaring. Hannah circled the vehicle slowly. A child's shoe lay under the rear bumper, small and blue, the kind that came with light-up soles. A few feet away, caught in a gnarled root, was a plastic toy knife, red paint or... No, that was blood, dried, cracked. Her pulse kicked harder. She crouched beside the back passenger door and tried the handle. Locked. She moved to the front. Locked too. She rapped lightly on the fogged window. "Hello? Anyone inside?" No answer. She leaned closer. Then she saw it. A shape, curled up on the back seat, pale limbs tucked into a fetal position. A child, maybe 6 or 7, couldn't see the face. Just a shock of hair and a pair of bare feet pressed against the door. Jesus. She scanned the area. Still no sign of anyone else. With no time to waste, she retrieved the crowbar from her day pack and jabbed it under the frame. The window gave with a metallic groan, but not before a sharp snap sliced through the air. Pain exploded across her wrist. She yanked back. Blood welled from a gash on her forearm, thin, precise, and deep. She looked closer. There were razor fragments mounted inside the car frame, deliberately installed. Someone had booby-trapped the door. This wasn't just dumped here, she muttered, teeth clenched. Wincing, she wrapped her arm with gauze from her pocket kit, then finished cracking open the window. The smell hit her like a fist. Damp sweat, metal, something chemical. She reached in and unlocked the door. The boy didn't move. She knelt beside the open door and spoke softly. "Hey, buddy, I'm Hannah. I'm here to help, okay?" Nothing. She reached out slowly. "I'm not gonna hurt you. You're safe." He flinched, but didn't pull away as she touched his shoulder. His eyes blinked open, vacant, hazel, bloodshot, hollow. He looked at her, not through her, and whispered, "They were gonna take me. On the boat, but I didn't pass." Hannah swallowed. "What boat? Who?" but his eyes shut again and he shivered. She pulled him gently from the back seat, wrapping her flannel overshirt around his bony frame. His legs didn't move much. She had to carry him, all 60 pounds of stillness. Bran nudged his head against the boy's arm, and for the first time, the child moved voluntarily, fingers twitching toward the Mustang's warm breath. It was a small miracle. They made it back to the cabin by dusk. Hannah laid him on the couch, started the wood stove, and checked his vitals. No fever, pupils reactive, but malnourished and bruised in odd patterns. He didn't speak again, just stared at the ceiling while Bran lay beside him like a sentry. Later that night, she stepped outside with a flashlight, needing air and silence. The trees had returned to normal. Owls hooted. A raccoon rustled through the brush. She turned to scan the clearing and saw it. A tiny red LED blinked once high in a pine tree. Then it vanished. She crept forward, flashlight beam dancing up the trunk. There it was. A camera, expertly hidden and mounted, lens angled straight toward where the car had been. She looked around. Someone had been watching. And they might still be out there. The nurses at Fayetteville Children's Hospital called him Noah. They had to call him something. He wouldn't say his real name, wouldn't speak at all, really. Hannah stood outside the observation room, arms crossed over a borrowed denim jacket, watching the boy through the glass. He sat in the far corner of the hospital bed, knees hugged to his chest, eyes fixed on the wall like it had answers. It had been 2 days since she'd found him, and he hadn't said a single word since the car. But she hadn't left either. Beside her, Dr. Maya Chen tapped notes into a tablet, brow furrowed. Early 30s, razor-sharp eyes, and a voice soft enough to calm hurricanes. She'd worked with trauma victims all over the country, but something about this boy unsettled her. "He doesn't blink at loud sounds," Maya murmured. "Doesn't flinch when I test reflexes, but the moment he hears that chime—" She pointed at the elevator bell that had just dinged at the end of the hall. "He curls in like he's been hit." Hannah nodded. "Same thing happened when the intercom beeped this morning." Maya crossed her arms. "That's not PTSD, that's conditioning." Hannah looked over sharp. "Military style?" "Maybe, or worse. Reflex programming. I've seen it before in some experimental rehab cases. Kids conditioned to respond or shut down with stimulus triggers. But this is different. It's deeper." Through the glass, Noah's eyes tracked something invisible in the air. "Has he eaten?" Hannah asked. "Only when the nurse leaves it by the window, and only if he thinks no one's watching." "Smart kid." Maya gave her a glance. "Too smart for his age. Did you see the bruising on his ribs? Uniform, not random." Measured, Hannah's jaw tightened. "Like restraints?" "Exactly." Just then, down the hall, Bran's hooves echoed lightly. Hannah turned and smiled as the Mustang approached. He walked with the calm presence of a seasoned warhorse. Silent, calculating, grounded. Hospital staff had raised their eyebrows at first, but Bran had a gift, a presence that couldn't be denied. He stopped at the window of Noah's room, ears flicking. Noah noticed. For the first time in hours, the boy turned. His eyes locked onto the animal. Slowly, cautiously, he slipped from the bed and stepped barefoot across the linoleum floor. At the window, he stopped. Bran lowered his head. Noah raised his hand, hesitated, then touch. He pressed his palm gently against the glass, and Bran pressed his muzzle back. No words, just connection. Maya exhaled. That's the first voluntary movement he's made all day." Hannah smiled faintly. "Bran's done more therapy than most humans I know." That night, Hannah stayed behind after visiting hours. She sat in the corner of Noah's room, letting the soft beeping of monitors lull the silence. Noah had curled under the blanket but hadn't slept. His eyes kept drifting toward the ceiling like he was mapping something. When Hannah finally dozed off in the chair, she dreamed of metal doors, red lights, and children who didn't scream even when they bled. She jerked awake to a sound. Footsteps. She blinked. A man stood just outside the door, lab coat, badge clipped to the chest, but she couldn't read the name from this angle. He wasn't hospital staff. Too stiff, too clean. She rose quietly and moved toward the glass, heart pounding. The man was staring straight at Noah. Hannah reached for the door handle. He turned suddenly and bolted. "Hey!" She flung open the door and gave chase, sprinting down the hallway barefoot. The man was fast, but she was trained. She caught the faint trail of muddy footprints along the waxed floors, leading to the emergency stairwell. By the time she made it to the parking garage, he was gone. Just a faint smell of bleach and cold air. Back upstairs, Noah hadn't moved, but the small pad of paper by his bed, where the nurses had left crayons, was no longer blank. Hannah picked it up. The page showed a drawing, a crude boat on dark water, dozens of stick figures inside. Each had a square tag on their wrist. One figure, marked with an X, stood alone on the dock. Below it, in shaky block letters, "They said I didn't pass." She sat on the edge of the bed, heart thudding. "What does this mean, Noah? The boat? The test?" The boy blinked, slowly, then whispered for the first time in days, "Don't let them take me back." Hannah felt her blood run cold. She nodded, fierce and steady. "I won't." The next morning, Dr. Chen entered with a second drawing. I found this on his tray. It was a room. Clean, sterile, round lights on the ceiling, a wide mirror on the wall, a one-way mirror. Maya ran her finger over the edges. "This is an observation chamber. Clinical, controlled. But see this?" She pointed at a black box in the corner. "A camera," Hannah said. "Hidden." Maya nodded. "He remembers the layout perfectly. That's not just trauma, that's imprinting." Hannah felt something shift inside her, a slow, burning anger. What the hell kind of place does that to a kid? Maya didn't answer. She just whispered, "And how many others are still there?" The forest was damp with yesterday's rain, and the air held a sharp chill that bit through Hannah's jacket as she led Bran along the winding trail behind her cabin. A raven's cry echoed once, then silence swallowed the sound whole. It had been 3 days since Noah was admitted to the hospital. 3 days of restless pacing, of scanning the woods, of checking her security cams every hour. Something was clawing at her gut, a knowing. The boy's whispered words still rang in her ears. "They were gonna take me, on the boat, but I didn't pass." Hannah had seen enough operations, classified and otherwise, to know when something didn't sit right. And that boy didn't come from some random car crash in the woods. He came from a pipeline, one that moved quietly, systematically, inhumanly. Bran stopped dead in his tracks. "Bran?" she asked. The Mustang's ears twitched. He stepped off the trail, slow and sure, nose to the damp leaves, tail flicking with unease. She followed, one hand resting on the grip of her pistol. They passed through a thicket of twisted vines and emerged into a hollow choked with pine needles and wet soil. The trees closed in tighter here, older, untouched. Bran stomped once, then began pawing at the earth. Hannah's breath hitched. She crouched beside him and pulled out her folding shovel. Every scrape revealed more. Disturbed soil, crushed leaves, something unnatural beneath. After 10 minutes of digging, her blade clinked against canvas. She pulled hard, a duffel bag, heavy, reeking of rot and gasoline. Unzipping it revealed the first horror, a stack of passports, dozens, maybe more. Each had the face of a child, different names, different countries, but the same haunted eyes. Below them, a brick of $100 bills, a plastic-wrapped USB drive, and a pink silicone bracelet smeared with dried mud. It read, Mila. At the very bottom, tucked beneath the clothes, was a porcelain doll, its head cracked, hollowed out. Inside the cavity, Hannah found a SIM card and a metal chip etched with a half-scraped QR code, the numbers barely legible. She sat back on her heels, the wind knocked out of her. This wasn't just trafficking. It was industrial, systematic, and far more sophisticated than anything she'd encountered in her time overseas. Bran snorted and backed up, his body stiff. His gaze was locked behind her. Hannah turned, hand going to her sidearm. A flicker of movement in the brush, nothing she could see clearly. The birds were gone again. She packed the bag, slung it over her shoulder, and turned back the way she came, her pulse hammering in her throat. Bran moved ahead of her, quick and silent, his every step purposeful. When they reached the cabin, she bolted the door behind her and yanked the blackout curtains closed. The bag went onto the kitchen table. She plugged the USB into her encrypted laptop. A folder popped open. Log 11, subject transfer, batch B13. Her finger hovered, then clicked. The screen flickered. The footage was grainy, taken from a fixed angle inside a shipping container. 6 children were huddled against the steel walls, wrists bound with zip ties. Their heads were shaved, their clothes mismatched and worn. In the corner of the screen, a man in surgical scrubs entered. No face, just gloves and a mask. He moved from child to child, scanning tags on their arms. One child sobbed quietly. Another rocked silently. Then he stopped in front of one boy. Noah, smaller, more alert. The man lifted Noah's chin, looked into his eyes, then wrote something on a clipboard. No injection, no words. Just a nod to someone off-screen. The camera cut to a printed sheet on the wall. Transfer, 5. Deferred, 1. Terminated, 0. Deferred. She rewound the footage. Freeze framed the moment Noah looked up. His eyes, calculating, watching. She grabbed her phone and dialed. Agent Cole, came the answer after one ring. This is Brooks. I've got a USB, surveillance footage. Kids in a container, a facility. This thing's organized like a shipping company, but it's children. I found a bracelet, too. Name's Mila. We might have a live one. Send it over. Also, there's a chip. Found it inside a doll. Might be biotech, might be military. It's partially scorched. Understood. Email all files. I'll route it through our encryption node. Anything else? Yeah, Hannah said. You need to get me clearance to search Wilmington Port. Coordinates match the footage. I'll pull strings. The call ended. Hannah leaned back, adrenaline cooling into a simmering dread. Then came a sound. A soft buzz, almost imperceptible. She stepped onto the porch. A black dot hovered high above the treetops. Drone, she muttered. Too high for private. Bran stepped beside her, his muscles coiled, his ears locked forward. The drone dipped, then shuddered. With a faint pop, it sputtered midair and dropped, smashing into the rocks below in a puff of acrid smoke. Auto-destruct. Hannah ran to it. What was left wasn't much. Shattered plastic. A scorched circuit board. No ID markings. Whoever was watching wanted no trace left behind. Back inside, she turned off every wireless signal in the cabin and secured the bag in a fireproof lockbox. She paced for an hour, then returned to her laptop. The USB had more. A set of documents, scans of shipping manifests with code names like Subject B13, Prototype Line 3, and Deferred Units. Each had a barcode. Some bore the stamp. Seraph Project, Asset Not for Release. Her eyes fell on one file. Prototype B13, psychological response log. But the file wouldn't open, encrypted. Hannah cursed under her breath. Bran let out a soft huff and pressed his head against her side. His warmth grounded her. "They're building something," she whispered. And Noah wasn't just trafficked, he was tested. She didn't say it aloud, but the thought hit her hard. Whatever these people were doing, it didn't end with one boy in the woods. It had only just begun. And Bran somehow seemed to know it too. The warehouse loomed in the fog like a forgotten scar on the city's edge. It sat on the outskirts of Fort Smith's abandoned freight district. Shuttered loading bays, rusted signs, and broken sodium lights that flickered like dying stars. Hannah crouched behind a half-toppled stack of wooden pallets, Bran's breath hot on her neck, his body coiled with tension. Across from her, Special Agent Miranda Cole adjusted the earpiece feeding her intel. Cool and composed, she nodded once at Reggie Dalton, their off-the-books tech guy, who was hunched over a modified tablet, fingers flying. "There are blind spots," he murmured. "Cameras are cheap, analog. We've got about 90 seconds between sweeps to get in and out. You screw up, you're a TikTok hashtag." Hannah gave him a look. "That's your version of a pep talk?" "I'm a hacker, not a cheerleader." Cole glanced between them. "We go in quiet. The moment I say extraction, you grab any kid in reach and move. Got it?" Bran let out a low whuff, as if in agreement. They moved like ghosts through the side lot. Hannah's boots barely touched gravel. At the side door, Reggie plugged in a thumb-sized device that popped the lock in under 5 seconds. The hallway inside reeked of bleach and industrial paint. Too clean, too empty. Every instinct in Hannah screamed cover-up. Cole led them past a break room with a flickering vending machine, then into a stairwell that descended 2 levels underground. There, Warehouse 6A revealed itself in full. It wasn't just storage. It was a holding facility. Rows of makeshift cells lined the floor, sectioned by wire fencing and low light. Most cages were empty, but some weren't. 3 children sat huddled on cots inside the far cell. Pale, quiet, too quiet. Hannah's heart squeezed. One girl wore a red hoodie. A familiar plastic bracelet clung to her wrist, Mila. Bran moved first, unprompted, trotting ahead to the bars. Mila's eyes lit up. She scrambled to her feet and pressed against the wire, whispering, "Bran, you found me." Hannah's voice cracked. "We're getting you out." Before they could break the lock, footsteps echoed above. Cole raised a hand. "Someone's coming." They ducked into the shadows as the elevator at the far end dinged open. A woman stepped out, heels clicking. Calm, confident. Dahlia. Her hair was sleek, eyes unreadable. She moved like someone who owned the space, as if the horrors below were just items on a balance sheet. She stopped before the cell, smiled at Mila, and said, "You're stronger than the others. That's why they like you." From the darkness, Hannah stepped forward. "Back away from the kid." Dahlia turned, almost amused. "Ah, the soldier with a conscience." Bran growled. "You really think this ends here?" Dahlia asked, stepping closer, tone still elegant. "You don't understand what we're building. The children, they're not victims, they're assets, enhanced, filtered for resilience." "Spare me the manifesto," Hannah snapped. "You drug them, code them, break them." Dahlia's voice turned low. "The world doesn't want the broken. We give them a purpose. You hide in the woods with your haunted horse and pretend justice still exists." Bran's muscles tensed. Without command, he lunged, slamming between Dahlia and Mila's cell. Dahlia stumbled back, eyes wide. She reached into her blazer, but Cole was faster. A gun was out, trained on her chest. Move, and you'll find out how federal we get, Cole said coldly. Reggie raced to unlock the cell. 3 kids, all alive, no signs of restraints, just tracking bracelets and coded tags. One boy clung to Mila's side. The other, barely older than 6, trembled but looked up at Hannah. Mila turned to her. They called him Subject 13, but they never let him go. Hannah's blood chilled. Where is he now? Mila glanced toward a black curtain at the back of the warehouse. They said he was special, too special to release. Dahlia, now cuffed and shoved against the wall by Cole, whispered, Subject 13 wasn't meant to escape. If he's out, it's already too late. The words felt like oil slicks, coating everything with dread. Reggie checked a confiscated hard drive and held it up. There's something here, a project file. Seraph. Status, prototype B13. Notes say, do not terminate, observe. Hannah exhaled sharply. She looked down at Bran, who stared at the curtain, tail rigid, eyes locked. Let's find him, she said. Cole shook her head. We need backup, a full unit. We may not have time, Hannah said. This thing, it's still moving. Behind her, the smallest child started humming a tune, low and rhythmic. It matched the strange melody Noah had once drawn in scribbles. Bran pressed his head to Hannah's thigh. A warning, a signal. Something was coming. The container was colder than anyone expected. It stood alone on a cracked strip of tarmac at a secondary customs checkpoint near the Louisiana border. Border agents had flagged it based on an unlisted serial number and irregular weight logs. The only reason it hadn't disappeared entirely was because someone forgot to delete one last shipping manifest entry. An oversight that cost someone, somewhere, a great deal. Hannah stood stiffly in the humid morning air, fingers twitching on the strap of her sidearm. Bran, as if sensing the weight of what waited inside, snorted low and restless, hooves shifting against the pavement. His ears pricked forward. I don't like this, said Miranda Cole beside her, arms crossed tight. Too quiet, no attempt to reclaim it, no resistance. It's like they wanted us to find it. Or test what we'd do when we did, Hannah muttered. 2 agents wrestled the container lock open. The heavy doors creaked back, and the world narrowed. A small boy sat cross-legged in the center of the otherwise empty metal chamber, pale, silent, drawing with a dull stub of graphite on the steel floor. Around him, geometric patterns, vents, grid lines, a detailed map of ductwork, as if the entire interior of the container had been memorized and translated through his hand. Noah, Hannah said quietly, taking a cautious step. The boy didn't flinch. But he wasn't Noah. His eyes lifted to hers, expression unreadable. His wrist tag read, Subject 13, deferred. Hannah crouched, holding out a water bottle. I'm Hannah. This is Bran. You hungry, partner? No answer. Bran approached slowly, his muzzle low to the ground. The boy's eyes flicked to the horse. For the first time, something flickered in his expression. Recognition. Not of Bran himself, but of what he was. As if the presence of something so living, so free, sparked a dormant part of him. The boy reached out. Fingers touched Bran's warm nose, a breath, a blink, and then a smile. A soft, stunned smile like sunlight cutting through fog. Dr. Maya Chen joined them, whispering to Miranda. His vitals are normal, no bruising, no sedation markers, but his blood work? It shows elevated neural feedback. Patterns we've only ever seen in deep program trauma patients. She crouched beside Hannah. He isn't just another victim. I know, Hannah replied, never taking her eyes off the boy. Back at the temporary medical facility in Baton Rouge, Subject 13 said nothing for 24 hours. But he kept drawing. Walls. doors, hidden spaces, ventilation routes, always from memory. On the second night, Hannah sat beside his cot while Bran rested just outside, visible through the window. The boy turned to her, voice a dry whisper. They said I'd be important. If I stopped feeling... Hannah's throat tightened. Who said that? They had numbers, not names. He closed his eyes. They made us forget. But they taught me how not to. Dr. Chen studied his sketches and cross-referenced them with archived blueprints recovered from the Wilmington raid. The match was near perfect. It's like he was designed to remember everything, but forbidden to understand it. Later that week, Reggie Dalton, the hacker, burst into Hannah's motel room, his laptop under one arm, eyes wide with disbelief. I found something buried deep, like 3 firewalls deep inside that warehouse server we cloned. He slid the laptop over. On screen, a directory labeled Project Seraph. Within it, video logs, code sequences, progress notes, and a singular file, 213B13, prototype memory vessel. Status, functional, observation only, emotion suppression, incomplete. Reggie looked up. There's another facility, New Mexico, the tag matches Subject 13 serial, but the B, that's new. Hannah exhaled slowly. A second prototype? Or the original, Reggie said. He's not just a kid, he's a container. For everything they did, every floor plan, every face, every name. Outside, lightning flashed on the horizon. The boy stood near the motel window, watching the storm roll in, Bran's reflection beside him. He didn't flinch. He didn't blink. But he turned to Hannah and said, "Do you think if I remember enough, someone will finally believe me?" Her voice caught. "I already do." Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number message. Second lab confirmed. Coordinates locked. Secure child. Await further orders. She pocketed the phone and moved toward the door, Bran already rising outside like he'd known before she did. "We're not done yet," she said. And with that, they rode into the dark again, toward what waited, and whoever still believed they could bury the truth.